Welcome to InFocus. This is Jabbar Al-Obaidi. In this episode, we'll be talking very important subject, which is really the election. And I know everybody has a lot of questions. People are nervous, are anxious, they are curious, which is okay in time of election. And just in a few weeks, November 3rd, we'll be heading to the election. And so with me, Merrily Kenny Hunt, Town Clerk, Bridgewater Town, Massachusetts. What are the most important preparations for the day of election or the early elections? If you can walk us through the process, because as I said in the intro, I know people are very nervous, which is, it's very right. You know, I think this is a responsibility. When if you feel, you know, you are nervous and you're anxious, I feel this is not a sign of weakness. This is actually a sign for willingness to get involved in the democratic process. So let's start. What are the preparations now in the town and your leadership and your also supervision?
Sure. Well, let me start with maybe saying there's gonna be every way possible for people to vote. The state is doing everything they can to make sure that we have all ways to vote. So we will have early vote by mail. We will have absentee votes. We will have early voting in person at the Academy building from the 17th of October through the 30th of October. And we will have in-person voting on the day of the election at the George Mitchell at the middle school at 166 Mount Prospect Street, where people are used to going to their in-person elections here in Bridgewater. So each one of those has a lot of moving parts. Right now, I think a lot of people are concerned about their mail-in ballots.
Yes, that's the first question. Yeah, so let's start with this area.
Okay.
So what can you tell the voters that and the residents of Bridgewater and surrounding towns? What's exactly the process, and is it safe? Is it secured? Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, as far as I have experienced, every avenue we have has been safe and secure. We did very well with the primary election. It was a record-breaking number who voted on September 1st in the state primary election. We're expecting record-breaking numbers today for this one, and I believe everything is safe, but everyone has their own personal concerns, so we want to make sure that we meet those and that people feel safe and secure with what they do. The first thing I was going to point out is I think probably most everybody has received this card.
The official 2020 vote by mail application.
Right. If you want to vote by mail. I have my husband's because he's not going to vote by mail, and so I just borrowed his card here. And what you do with this card, I think most people have by now returned it if they were planning on it. You fill out this piece, it tears right off, and you fill it out and you say that you want a vote by mail. This is a vote by mail, early vote by mail ballot. So you tear this right off. It's already addressed to come back to us. It'll have your name on the back and your signature. You have to sign it. If it doesn't come in with a signature, we have to call you and see if you're going to come down and sign it, because we have to have your signed permission before we send you a ballot. This address that's on here for you is what's in our voter registry, and the state voter registry. It proves that you're a registered voter in Bridgewater. So you mail this into us, we bring it in, we stamp it, we time stamp it with the date we get it back. We put it in the computer to say this voter wants a vote by mail ballot. Then we know that if you call us up on the phone, you say, am I going to get a vote by mail ballot? We can look it up and we can say, yes, you can. If you didn't get this, you can go online to the Secretary of State's site. And I think BTV is going to put up some of these some of these URLs so people can see them. And I don't know if it's too small for people to read.
Yeah, we'll insert it and do it. But
Right.
so
There
that
is
so
a
they
URL that you
call,
can do.
they should call in.
No, they would go online and
Yes.
their vote by mail ballot with this link. So it's on this list. I think BTV will find a way to get that up so everybody can see it. And so if you didn't get one of those cards, you can go online and order an early vote by mail ballot.
Okay.
If you want, you can call our office and we can send you an application for an absentee ballot that you can send back into us. You can also fill out an absentee ballot online. Usually in most elections, in all elections right up until the primary this year, an absentee ballot means that you can't make it to the polls, or you are ill, you are disabled, there's some reason you're going to be out of town, you cannot come to the polls. You always had to swear to that. It was pains and penalties of perjury that was going to be your status on election day. That is not true this year. Anyone can have an absentee ballot this year. Anyone who's registered to vote can have an absentee ballot, and anyone who's registered to vote can have an early vote by mail. If by chance you accidentally apply for both, and even if somehow it gets through our system and you get both of them, because maybe you applied for one and we didn't have it registered in the system by the time you applied for the other one and something happened and we sent you two. That's a possible thing that could happen, very rarely, but it could. When you go to vote, you're only going to vote one ballot. One of them will come in and we will cast it. It will be voted. If you try it a second time or you try to come in person, you're going to be crossed off the list. So you're not going to be able to vote both.
Do I have to present an ID for that?
No. Voting in Massachusetts, no, you do not have to present an ID for voting in Massachusetts. You presented your ID when you registered to vote. So if you are registered to vote, your ID has already been recorded with our office and with the state, and Massachusetts doesn't require more than that. Okay, so maybe having to register.
So could you repeat the early date for the early vote? When will it start, please?
So the in-person early voting, that's different than the early vote by mail.
Yes.
Early vote by mail is already in process. As soon as we get them, we will start sending them out. We will probably be sending out about 7,000 ballots. Each one of them has to be individually stuffed in an envelope to send out to people. So we, of course, aren't going to be able to send all 7,000 the first day we get them, but we will be sending them out as quickly as we can.
Okay.
The early vote in person starts on the 17th of October and runs through the 30th of October at the Academy building. And people will come. We will do depending on what the crowds are, we don't know how crowded it will be, but people will be socially distanced and there will be hand sanitizers around the booths. The voting booths will be sanitized in between every use. The pens will be sanitized in between every use, and people will be wearing masks to do that. So there will be weekends that you can vote. There will be every day of the week of the 2 weeks that on our regular hours.
Now,
that's when people can come to vote, early vote. Now, if they've gotten a vote by mail, an early vote by mail ballot, and you will know that that's what it is because it'll say it on the top, early vote by mail. If you got that ballot, but you don't want to put it in the drop box, you don't want to send it by the post office, you can bring it to early voting. Check in with the checker. When you come, they'll mark you off the list that your early vote by mail ballot has come in, and you can put it straight in the ballot box at early vote by mail. You can have it marked before you come in the election. That same process happens somewhat similarly on November 3rd. However, if you're going to bring your early vote by mail ballot to the polls on November 3rd, do not mark it first, because we're going to take it away from you because it says early vote by mail, and that's going to be the day of the election. November 3rd is not going to be early anymore. We will replace it with a regular ballot, and you'll vote a regular ballot at the polls that day. but we will take your early vote by mail ballot back because we try to keep track of the ballots so that we know how many ballots we sent out and how many ballots came back.
Yeah.
I know it's a little complicated.
No, you really made it very simple. It's step by step almost. So now, before we go deeper into this, how about the younger or the 16-year-old new registrars and how this work?
Right. So a couple of years ago, Massachusetts changed the rules. You can register you had always been able to register to vote when you turned 18. And so all of our voters, all the people who vote are over 18. If that's still the truth. But what's happened here in Massachusetts is you can now register to vote when you turn 16. That doesn't mean you're going to get to vote when you're 16. It means your name is in the registry. And the minute that you turn 18, you can vote. So as people, I hope, are aware, you usually have to register to vote 20 days before an election so that we can get everything in our systems and know who's going to be coming, who's eligible to come and vote. For this election, they've moved that back to 10 days before the election. You have to register to vote before the 24th of October. But 16-year-olds or between 16 and 18-year-olds who have registered to vote when they were younger, if they turn 18 on the 31st of October, they will be able to vote on the 3rd of November. If they turn 18 on November 3rd, they will be able to vote in November.
That's interesting.
Registered because they've registered early, so there isn't any of that. They're already in the system. They put their name in the system early. So it's a good thing. We kind of we think it's a fun thing at our office. For the last 5 years, we've been sending birthday cards to all the kids that we know, the ones who are in our census, for their 18th birthday. And we send them a voter registration form along with it. And we say, happy birthday, now you can register to vote. So we've got to use up all those cards that say 18th birthday. And the next printing is going to say 16th birthday. And we're going to start out to people when they're 16. And
It's fun. It is fun. Yeah, it's celebration.
Yeah. Well, I tell them too in the card, I say, if you call us ahead of time, I'll run downtown and I'll get you a cupcake and we'll give you a cupcake. That, of course, is when the offices are open for the public to come in, which they aren't right now, but we are hoping they're going to start to open by appointment on October 5th. We're hoping.
No, thank you so much. It's very, very, very valuable information. So now how you encourage students that are busy with their school, especially college students and those that are involved in universities.
Right. And we're so excited that we hear that a lot of college students are really planning on voting this time. So we're excited about that.
So what's your word for that?
How do they register? Yeah, because some of them might be out of state students. Some of them might be in-state students coming from another town. Some might be living here in Bridgewater. And if you're living here in Bridgewater, you are eligible to register to vote in Bridgewater. If you have an address in Bridgewater, if it's a university address in a dorm, or if it's a house, an apartment or something you're living in Bridgewater, you are definitely eligible to vote in Bridgewater. And we want to see everybody register. However, in our office, our philosophy is that you're young, you're doing this, you probably care more about your hometown than you do government in Bridgewater. And there are elections other than these big general elections that you should be interested in. So we encourage the students to register in their hometowns, because then when they graduate, get jobs and move around and everything, they're more likely to remember that they were registered in their hometown than that they were registered in Bridgewater. And they're more likely to actually be participating in local elections in their hometown and staying in touch with that. It's probably the rare student that comes here and wants to be really involved in local Bridgewater politics.
Yeah.
No. And they certainly can. We're happy to have them register here in Bridgewater. But it's been our experience that sometimes a few years down the line, it gets a little confusing for them to remember exactly what they did with that registration. So,
excellent point. Now, in terms of the people, they are worried about COVID-19. It's going to be hopefully going to be crowded and But what are the system there, sanitation and, you know, taking care of the health side of the
Sure.
election story?
We're doing everything we possibly can. We are requiring masks at the election. We cannot and will not stop you from voting if you're not wearing a mask. It's your right and your privilege as a citizen and a registered voter to come in and vote. We ask your respect for our poll workers who are going to be sitting there all day. They're there from 6:30 in the morning, probably till about 9 or 9:30 at night, greeting everyone and handing out ballots to everyone who comes in. So I worry very much about their safety. And I ask people to wear masks for that. We like to spray sanitizer on the hands when people come in. I have a sign up that tells what the ingredients are. It's mostly alcohol, so I tell them not to lick their hands after that. Just a joke. And we have other pump sanitizers around. We'll be sanitizing the booths in between every use. So someone who's there and votes a ballot, as soon as they leave, somebody goes and sprays the booth down and cleans the pen so that the pens are all clean. We have people, so far we had people exiting away from where they were entering. With our facility at the Mitchell School, I don't know that we'll be able to keep that exact same circulation flow that we had at the primary election. We're going to be using the gym, which is where people are used to going, and we're going to be using both cafeterias, which is down the long hallway. And I think there probably just is no way to get people in and out without some of them passing each other in the hallways, which we didn't have that at the primary election, and we were happy about that. We will have sneeze shields in between the voters and our poll workers. Thanks to BSU and Boston University, we've been given face shields for all of our poll workers, and all of them will have masks on as well, and sanitizers on their desks. And they will be, I'm trying to figure out, they'll be wearing gloves when they hand the ballot to voters. So we're doing the best we can to try to keep it safe. We just had a training today, and they tell us to leave all of our doors and windows open and try to have as much circulation as possible. So I think I'm gonna be wearing like my heaviest winter coat, because I can't imagine that it's gonna be warm on November 3rd. We're gonna be sitting at the front of the school there where it's always pretty chilly. So people can come dressed warmly. We have no idea what lines are gonna be like. Of course, we're gonna have 6 feet, asking people to stay 6 feet away from each other. It's one of the reasons that the early voting and the vote by mail or putting your ballot in the drop box are great options, because then you don't have to stand in those lines. You don't have to worry about your exposure or anyone else's exposure. You know your ballot is safe with us. So we do, you know, we encourage that for people who feel that that's a good way for them to vote.
Anything else that you would like to share with the voters?
One of the things I might suggest to them, if they're coming to vote in person on November 3rd, look up their precinct first. So come knowing your precinct, because if people are familiar with the Mitchell School, there are 3 sets of front doors into the lobby. And we're thinking of having people enter by different doors to keep the lines separated as much as possible. So you'd have to know your precinct to know which door you're going to enter. We might set up a tent or something out in front to help people learn their precincts. We always help people figure out what their precincts are, but it will be faster if people know their precinct when they come.
Can they know that beforehand?
Yeah, they can know that beforehand. First of all, number one, it came on these cards. So if they got these cards, right down here, it will tell you your precinct.
Yes.
You can call us and ask your precinct. You can look it up in your street listing. The street list for this year isn't out yet because of COVID. We haven't gotten it out, but if people have them from years past, your precinct is the same. It hasn't changed since 2010. Or ask your neighbor, because your neighbor might know what your precinct is.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, no, and
It's good to come prepared with that information. You can also look it up.
Yes.
The other thing you can do to even check and make sure you're registered to vote is go to the Secretary of State's site and check your voter registration. And BTV has that as one of the URL links that I gave them as well to check your voter registration. Make sure you are registered, make sure it's up to date, make sure you haven't moved and changed addresses or changed your name or anything like that that would make it difficult for you to vote. Sometimes people don't remember when they move. If you move here from Brockton, Taunton, Boston, you have to change your registration to be a Bridgewater voter. So sometimes people come in and say, I've always voted. I've never not voted. I know I'm a registered voter. Well, you moved to Bridgewater and you're still registered in New Bedford, but you're not registered in Bridgewater. So check your voter registration, make sure it's up to date. And if it's not updated on the URL at the Secretary of State's site, it's very easy if you have a computer to go in and change your name or your party or your address or to register to vote.
This is again very important information. And so the last thing, if you want to share, we have a few minutes left.
I do. I'd love to show people. I know people worry about these mail-in or drop box submitted ballots. And I know they get confused because there's a lot of envelopes and there's process that happens even at the voter end when you get them. So when you get a mail-in ballot, this is what it looks like. When it comes, it'll have your name on here. It'll come individually to you. We can, even if our offices are open, we never hand out ballots to people and let them take them home. They could have come in and voted them in the office, but they have to be mailed now. So we mail it. When you open it, there are several things inside. The first thing that you'll want to look for is a set of instructions. You will find your ballot. This is not a real ballot. This is a ballot left over from the primary election. So you'll find your ballot. And I want to tell you a couple things to do about when you mark your ballots, okay? These are ballots from the primary election that someone actually voted. And if the ballots aren't voted properly, they're kicked out of the tabulator machines and we have to hand count them. And that can take us hours at the end of the election. And we're trying very hard to give a November 3rd election result before 11 o'clock on November 3rd. So when we have ballots kicked out, if it takes us 3 or 4 hours to count them, that really slows us down. So I wanted to show you some of the things that can happen. When this person voted their ballot, can you see the circles that are supposed to be filled in?
Yes.
Are they filled in? No. They have,
it's not yet.
they have check marks in them.
Yes.
And check marks means that they get thrown out of the machine and we have to have a person look at them to count it. So that takes extra time for us. Here's another one where someone, can you see how they filled in the circles? It's just partially filled in.
So the machine would not be able to read it.
These are ballots that we had to hand count after the primary. I went down and I took them out of the bin. I'm going to put them back in there tomorrow. But that's what happens. So you really have to fill in that circle. You have to use a black pen and don't write. I hate to sound like a.
No, it's really important. So Mary, so people, this is really an excellent point you brought forward. So if something wrong with the filling, then you will catch up and then it will be counted, but it's be manually that you have it. Okay.
Right. It will be counted. Those check marks will be counted, or if you put an X, it will be counted. It's just going to take extra time.
Yes.
So, the other thing that could happen is when you send it back in, then there's going to be an envelope like this in there that there's going to be 2 envelopes. There's this envelope that you put your ballot inside this envelope. You must put your ballot inside this envelope and you must sign it. That doesn't mean we're going to know how you voted. It doesn't mean we're going to know how you voted, but we have to know that your ballot came back so we can mark it off, that it was your ballot that was returned. Okay? So this is what holds the ballot. And then you put it in the white envelope and you send it back to our office, right? So there's
Yes.
several envelopes. So what happens with the white envelope, you would,
A lot of envelopes there.
well, yes, this is why I'm trying to keep everything straight. This is how they come into our office. I put a thing over the person's address. You would put your name and address up here, again, helping us identify that this is your ballot that's coming back. I don't know if you can see on it, we time stamp it. It's up here. It's this mark up here. It tells us
clear.
in. We keep all of these envelopes. These are primary election envelopes I'm showing you. This is what happened with this envelope. I took out whose name it was. This person sent their ballot in with no name and no signature. It was a good thing they gave us a return address so we could look it up and see if we had their phone number, and we could call them and ask them to come down and sign their ballot. Otherwise, that ballot wouldn't be castable. We couldn't, it wouldn't be voted.
Excellent demonstration. Excellent
That person would
demonstration.
have lost it. So try to just be calm when you get your first envelope and realize that there's a lot inside there. Read the instructions. They'll walk you through it. Sign your ballot envelope, because once we get it in and we open the white envelope, we take the ballot envelope out. We check it to make sure it has been signed. We file it, we stamp it, so we know that when we got it. We keep everything filed according to precinct and according to your street address, not according to your name. And when it's time to count these ballots for early voting or for absentee voting, we open them like this. We run them through the opener this way, so we're not seeing your name. The ballot is taken out. It is folded like this, upside down. They're all folded upside down in a pile. And when they're run through the tabulator, that's the way they're run through the tabulator. So there's no chance that we are looking at your name and looking at your ballot. We don't have, number one, we don't have time for that. Number two, that's not the way we do it. That's not our process. We're not in this to find out who voted how in this election. We're just anxious and excited that everyone will vote and will feel safe about it. So we handle our ballots with a lot of care. They're kept in our vault at night, the early vote ballots and the absentee ballots. Nobody messes with them except just our staff. And then we take them to the polls and they're counted on election day.
Marilee, this is really great again. So I think, the most important part of this is people, they have a question they can ask, make sure that you will get the information. And I think it's enough information now you have, and the town is ready to also receive your questions. And can they stop by the office, or
we're not open
still
to the
closed?
public yet. We're not open to the public. I've heard rumors that the building will open to the public on October 5th by appointment only. So you would have to have an appointment. You would have to call when you get there. You'd have to be let into the building. So it's best to call us. 508-697-0921 is our office number. There are 3 of us there. Any of us are happy to answer your questions.
We're going to see you on November 3rd.
I
hope people they will really heed your recommendations in terms of handling their mails, whether it's by mail or in person when you have the early voting. And I think the preparation is wonderful, and that's we all of us as residents of Bridgewater. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I just want to mention, Jabbar, too. We have a drop box at the Academy building, at the Bedford Street parking lot, just by the handicap ramp. So if people don't want to use the mail, they don't want to come in person, and put it in the drop box. We check it several times a day, and even on election day, we'll be checking it several times every day. I'll be standing right there at 8 o'clock when the polls close and getting any last minute ballots. If somebody brings it at 7:59, their ballot will still be counted.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your leadership, and thank you for watching InFocus, and we'll see you in another episode.
Thanks.